Hello everyone, thank you for clicking on the video today. My name is Elliot Forbes and today I'm going to be trimming my beard. So I've just trimmed my hair, which means my beard now is looking really quite long, really quite ragged. So we're going to be trimming it down today. Now I like quite a short beard, I tend to have it just so it's above stubble, but the difference that I have with it, with the extra details, is what I do is then fade down the sides, both sides, and then I'll fade up from the neck. I never put a clean line underneath mine. I feel I'm more a natural look, but by then fading it out, it gives a little extra detail to it than just leaving it. What that also does, by fading it out, is means that it lasts a bit longer. It grows out a little bit softer, doesn't feel as though it's so heavy. If you just then were to leave it, say just do a 2 all over it, what you'll feel in a few days is though this then feels really quite heavy, it feels quite grown out quite quickly. If we can then do this down to a 0 at the bottom, it then feels as though it lasts a lot longer, it won't grow out heavy underneath, and you feel like you have more longevity with the beard trim. So the tools that I'm going to be using for this today is, I'm going to be using a clipper which has a taper lever on it. So this with no guard on, that's a 0. If we open it up, then that comes to a 0.5. The reason why we would need more of a taper arm on this is so that we can get the blend and the transition as smooth as possible. Obviously the different notches the whole way on it, the more that there are on it, the smoother the transition will be from nothing into the hair. 2 guards that we're going to use with this also today then is a number 2, which is 6mm, and that's the length I tend to take the round through the chin and through all over it and then fade into that length. Obviously then what we also need is a 1, which would then go down to a 3mm, and then by obviously putting the 1 on and adjusting the lever, that then gives us more of a gap in between the 0 and the 2. The next tool that I would have then is going to be a comb, and all that's going to be doing just to some extra details, just then underneath here, just to take some more off, or just then off through the side. And that makes your life a lot easier by having a comb. So my first step today when trimming the beard is going to be by putting the number 2 guard on the clippers, and we're going to work over the whole way through it, take that all down to a uniform length, making sure obviously going lots of different directions. My hair on my face is very soft, so if I were just to run up it just once or a couple of different times, that would leave a lot of long hairs on mine. So I have to go over it different directions all the way just to be able to make sure I get all of the hairs off. So you just got to be very mindful when you're doing that. And once we've taken that down, I can then move on to the next step. So the next step, once we've taken that down to a uniform length, is to then basically put the guidelines in from where the fade is going to start. So we need to put a guideline on the sides, left side and the right side, and then we need to put a side down, a guideline then underneath. So when we're putting the guidelines in the side, really you can go as low as you want with this and as short as you want with this. I'm going to go down to a 0, which will be on the clippers, and then with it then closed all the way. And what I'll do, the place I'm going to pick with that is going to be probably the bottom of my ear as a guideline. So then just put the little notch in there and then take the rest of that down nice and short. Put that one in, and then basically I'm going to match that up to the next side. So I know now by putting them both in before we start fading down, I can make sure that they're balanced, and that means that the fade will then start in the same place for that. Whilst I've then not got any guards on, what I'll do is I'll also put the guideline in for underneath. Now, obviously we want to go nice and short underneath so that it has the longevity, but you've got to keep this a lot lower than where you would if you were, say, putting a full line in. This is just the start of the fade, So we just want to put this, so we can see that my natural hairline starts here. So for me, I'm going to probably start that finger width above that, just so that then gives me a lot of space to be able to make sure that the fade is nice and smooth and a good transition. If I was to put this then a little bit higher, what that is then going to mean is I'm going to have to fade over such a small space that actually is probably not going to be a massive difference between a fade and then actually putting a clean line in. So I'm going to start this then probably just a finger's depth above that. And just checking to make sure that that's balanced, so it sits nice and square and through there. And what that does is, by not then sort of taking that up rounder, that then means we can preserve the corners whilst then we're fading it out as well. So whilst I've now put those guidelines in, the next step will be I'm going to fade down the cheeks. So I'm going to start on one side, then work to the left side, and that's how we'll go from there. So we've got the 0 in. We've got that in through there, so the next step I'm going to do is I'm then going to open this clipper guard up so it's then to a 0.5, and then basically I'm just going to work down that just so it just knocks that line out, and basically we've then got just one line which is now where the 0.5 is. So knock that 0 line out, we've now put a line in where the 0.5 is. The next step would be to then use number 1 guard, which is 3mm. I'm then going to close that all the way down, so that this is going to be a true 1, and then I'm basically just going to be working over that line to just fade that out again. So we're just always the whole time working with one line. So now I've knocked that 0.5 line out, and what we've got left here is then a 1.5 line. I'm then just going to open this out to the 1.5 and then work over that line again. The shed then will disappear and work then into the length that we have for the 2. So that then you see that then works for a smooth transition from the 0 into the length that we have as a 2. And what I'm going to do now is then just repeat that on the other side. So after now we've faded both of these cheeks down into the length in that I have through the 2, the next step then obviously is to fade out underneath. And the thing that we need to bear in mind when we're doing this is that yes, we want a smooth fade and we want that to then go into the 2, but what we also need to think of it is that we need to still use the same principles as if we were cutting a full beard and putting a clean line in, by thinking that it still needs to be back in a straight line. Because if then I was to fade up and the fade finishes here, then actually that's then going to also drag the illusion down. It's going to sit too low through here. So when I'm looking in the mirror, I still should be able to not see any neckline underneath. It should be a smooth transition, but basically we want the 1.5 to meet the 2 still just on the jawline, so it strengthens it up and gives the illusion of a real strong jawline. And by doing that then, we just then want to work with 0.5 just over this line. I'm going to be stretching the skin out just so that it can make sure it gets all the hairs out, the hairs stick up nicely so we can get them off very easily. So we've got one line which was the 0 at the bottom, and I'm just going to use the 0.5, still working with quite a square line with it, just then knocking that out, which is then going to leave just one more line above that. So all you want to be doing is then working probably a finger depth above it, maybe not quite a finger depth, but enough so that it gives it enough gap and an actual, so there's a transition. And just making sure that all these hairs have gone off in a different way, in which the way they grow, they just then sit nice. So just knock that line up, and still now just left with one line, but that's now the 0.5 line that we have through there. And then again, we're just going to use the 1 onto the clippers, close that all the way down so it's a true 1, and then we're just going to be knocking over this line again, just then moving it up another notch. Just working over it, tensing, pulling the skin down, making sure that's nice and taut, and then not going into the corner like this, but still maintaining a square angle with this, so we can build up more of a corner into the sides of it as well. We don't want to forget about the principles of how a beard should look also. So I'm just working over that very easily. Just wiping that line out so that we're then again just going to be left with the one line above it, which is going to be the one line where we're then going to use so. That then sits nice and clean through there. And then all we're going to do then is work then with the 1.5 and then try and eradicate this last line that we have in through there. So we can see now that this actually joins just then almost the line where we say if we were putting a normal beard line in, would be back in through there. So you can see it sits just below that in the moment. So we're going to be then working into that natural line, just working over the top of it. Using a flicking motion, just so that we don't then go in too far with it and take too much of a chunk off. We're just rocking over that line in a sort of a C motion. So C like that, just flicking out with it. And that's just going to be taking that corner off through there to make sure that blend sits as smooth as possible. And once this is done, we're just then going to be working with the comb just to refine it slightly. And for me, why do I fade it out as opposed to putting a line in? Well, as you can probably see, I actually have a bit of a gap in the beard just here, and there's also a bit of a gap here where it's just a bald spot. So for me, if I was to put a stronger line in through there, it actually wouldn't look very strong. It would highlight the gaps even more. So by making it a smooth transition, you're in essence hiding them. And also, I'm not a massive fan of having a clean line. I feel like it just works in with my personality more to be having it as a fade out and more of a natural look. But still a groomed look. So we can see now that what we've got, that then sits quite faded out, but you see there's then certain areas that need detailing. So here, my hairs are very soft, so the clippers, and when you put the guard on them, it doesn't always pick those off, and there's a few just sort of longer hands there, which then means that it gives the areas, makes the areas look darker, and so it doesn't look as faded. So then this is when then the comb comes into handy, and we would then just use the clippers with it on a 0, so it's as close to that. Obviously you want to make sure when you're using these, you're being very careful with it and you're not just then going to take a chunk out. So always then using the comb, picking these hairs up. So these hairs are growing up, so for me I'm actually going to have to comb down with it. So you can see the tooth is that way, I'm then combing down with it so it picks those up, and then can just nip those off so it's still, the fade looks nice. So you can see when I'm doing this then underneath, the teeth are this way, I'm coming in, then beveling out. So beveling out so you don't take too much away from it. So just picking those hairs up there, and just taking those off. Any of the longer ones that get caught in it. So there's a couple of longer ones here, just then nipping those off. Because you see a common, well not necessarily a fault, but a lot of things I see with guys in the chair when they trim their own beards at home, you tend to get a lot of, they've trimmed a beard down to like say a 2 or a 1, something like that. You'll find that and they get a lot of longer hairs in through here where they're a different growth pattern. So that's why it's so key then to make sure you're working all the different directions and then just refining off with the comb at the end. Just to add all the extra details that make it look as though it's been done properly and done by a barber as opposed to just being done by yourself. Nice, so you can see now that then fades out nicely. Where the fade finishes is just at the bottom in the right place where it should be. So actually when we look from the side, we can still see that that strengthens up the jawline and still gives the illusion of it being really strong. And let's be fair, I need that. I've got virtually no chin, so anything strengthening up like that makes a massive difference to myself. So you can see just then comes in nicely through there. So the final step with it is going to be is now the moustache. Now my moustache tends to go really heavy right in the middle through here. So we've done a 2 all through here, but for myself I'm actually going to take this down to a 1 so it doesn't grow out quite so heavy. I found that whenever I've done a 2, it then grows out and then the moustache looks thicker and heavier than the rest of the beard. So I'm going to be doing this with a 1 guard, with a 3mm, then with that closed, just by taking that all off. Now, another common thing I tend to see with a lot of guys when I'm cutting their hair is they'll trim their moustache, and they've trimmed it just the same way that I have, they've gone over it. But what you'll actually find is there's quite a lot of longer hairs that then just sit underneath the nose where the clippers haven't been able to fully take them off. So this again is then where the comb comes in handy. We would then just pop that just underneath the nose. That then picks them up nicely and we'd go down to a 0, no guard on it. And that then can just refine those off at the end and get rid of the extra hairs through there. And the final step with that then is just making sure we'll comb them down, make sure there's no stragglers gone in through there, and we can then just press a little line and make sure that we get any of those off so it looks more of a smoother, smart lining through there. Nice. And for me, I don't ever tend to get any hairs on my cheeks. The natural line of my beard just stays, is at a nice height already, so I actually don't have to do anything in through here. So, but for a lot of you guys, if you wanted to then, if you have more of a cheek hair in through there, what you can also do is then go down to like a 0 in through the top, down to a 0.5, and then fade that into the length that we have through here. Reminding yourself that the line that you want to pick through on the face, picture it from the top of your ear into then the corner of your lip. So that's the line that you want to go. That's a good rule of thumb to be able to go in with, and that will then keep that in quite a natural and normal line without going too low with it. But you still want to keep a lot of the density in through the cheeks as well, because that's obviously where the beard comes from. So that then wraps up the beard today. We've taken that down, it's faded out quite nicely, it gives a fresher look, it gives more of a natural look without really being too sculpted. So I like this is the way I've tended to go now for quite a while. I think I'll be maintaining this for a good number of years to come. So thank you guys for tuning in today. Go and click subscribe, it's much appreciated. If you want to go and follow me on Instagram, my name is @Elliot Forbes. Go out there, check out my page, go and book online, and I'll see you soon. All the best. Thank you very much. Bye.